What's up, everybody? Welcome to Coach's Corner. I'm your host, Cam Cooper. It's your co-host, Isaac Cantrell, and we're here today with head varsity wrestling coach, Coach Kasey Hanley. So, Coach, a pretty big milestone here recently with 400 dual wins as a wrestling coach. How does that feel?
Kind of a shocker. I think at the beginning of the season, Coach Garner asked me, how many wins that I had, and we keep records of a lot of things. So we went back and looked at it, and I think that we were at maybe 383 or something like that. So I didn't realize he was keeping up with it until that night, and so he kind of surprised me when he brought out a plaque and stuff for the 400th win. It was a special night. It's something I'm very grateful for. Something I'd have never, told anybody, hey, this is coming up.
Yeah, it's one of those moments that you were just kind of humble and didn't really realize. You know what I mean? It happened. You're like, oh dang, I didn't even realize.
I think a lot of that's time. I've been here this is my 19th year coaching wrestling at Banks County. So
yeah. So out of those 19 years, so we know you have like WWE and all that kind of stuff. People call it like WrestleMania. All that's considered wrestling too. How many kids have you ever had come out thinking it's like WWE? Like you're about to go out there and get like RKO'd.
At the high school level, I haven't had any. But I'm sure that I do remember Coach Marlowe, Coach Marlowe is probably one of the biggest reasons that I'm at Banks County. That Coach Marlowe told me a story about, a kid coming in and asking where the ring ropes were, and then another kid that was, wearing a lucha libre mask.
Yeah.
So, but I haven't. If they did think it, they never told me.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see people coming in there, like where's the ring at? All that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So as a coach, I know you mentioned Coach Marlowe, and he's the reason you're at Banks County. Do you have a coach that just sticks out to mind that has changed your life as a wrestling coach or a mentor or somebody like that?
I think there's a lot of coaches along the way. Your first coaches, and then for me at a very, very young age, it was Todd Shirley and Scott Talbert. Scott Talbert probably carried us more places when we were kids than anybody else. And then when I got to high school, I was very blessed to be under Hall of Fame coach Jack Keene at Jefferson, and just being able to be beside Coach Keene, see how he would set up a lineup for a duel, and those things made a really big impact. And I kind of knew from an early age that I wanted to coach wrestling. I think Coach Love from Commerce, he and I grew up together and very good friends. And I remember he and I talking when we were probably he was probably in middle school and I was in elementary school. That one day we were going to be a head wrestling coach. So.
Heck yeah. Had it planned out the whole life, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I went, here and there, and then eventually just came back to where it kind of all started.
So we've talked about you having a mentor, not really having a mentor, but having all those great guys in your life that carry you different places. What was your relationship like with wrestling when you got to the high school level? Because I know some people I talk to nowadays, they have a love-hate. Some people they just straight love. Some people just straight hate it. I mean, there's all kind of different relationships with wrestling you can have. What was yours?
Honestly, I would fall in that love-hate category. From the time that I started, really. I loved competing. And at the same time, the butterflies and stuff that you feel right before the competition, those and riding. Most of the tournaments that I went to when I was a kid, we were, piled up together in somebody's car, riding to Atlanta or riding to Tennessee or riding to Indianapolis or wherever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, those butterflies are kind of with you that entire time. You're thinking about, first of all, am I going to make weight? and then obviously you're thinking about your competitors, and that really never changed all the way through. Matter of fact, a lot of it's still that way. The thing that I do, I guess that keeps me going. Multiple things really keep me going, but the biggest thing is I truly love the competition. Like when it starts, first whistle blows, nerves are gone. I'm ready to roll.
So, we talked about a little bit earlier. You wanted to coach wrestling your whole life. What made you want to do that? I know we talked a little bit about your coaches, like how they were inspirational to you, and you loved making the lineup and you loved competing. Is that what sold the deal for you, or is there something else?
I grew up in a wrestling gym. I mean, from the time that I was born, literally I was in a wrestling gym. My brother is 11 years older than I am, so he was already competing. He was a 2-time medalist in high school, and as a little kid, you, especially when your brother is an accomplished athlete, you look up to him. And it was no different for me. I was very blessed to have a brother that truly cared, that was there, and that was kind of what drew me into the sport. And when I started competing, he was still in high school, so not only did I want to impress him, I also wanted to impress his friends and that were also wrestling with him. I also wanted to impress Coach Keene. So back then, I remember at times, just kind of being like this little. I'd show up with the team, the high school team, and I was probably 6 years old, and they'd be like, "Hey, we got a kid that wrestles here. He's a little bit older than you. He weighs a little bit more than you. Do you want to wrestle him?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So that's kind of the way it was for a long time.
Yeah. So I know earlier you mentioned that you have coached here at Banks County for 19 solid years.
Right.
How many years have you coached in total as an assistant and head coach?
Well, my first year at Banks County, I didn't coach wrestling. I just coached football, and second year I coached football, wrestling, and golf. But before I came, to Banks, I started off, coaching middle school at Jefferson, and shortly after that, my brother asked me if I would come, help him coach at Jackson County. So I went over there, and I was at Jackson County for probably, 7 or 8 years, and then, I think I had 1 year off from coaching in between all that before I actually started, as the head coach here. So 1996 is when I actually started coaching.
1996. Coach.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Yeah, I had a coach that one of our coaches, and I'm not going to name names, but he's a coach at Banks County. He came in my room the other day, and we were just talking, and he said, I was born in 1997. I'm like, yeah, I was already coaching by then. Time flies.
Yeah. So we've been talking about your coaching career and your wrestling career pretty much so far. Now I kind of want to get into a different side that not a lot of people see from coaches. How is it like? Because I know you have a son actually on the team as of right now,
Right.
that is wrestling. How is it like balancing being a varsity sport head coach, father, and not only that, a husband too?
It's tough. One of the questions that people ask me all the time, they'll say, "Hey, what age do you think is the perfect age to start a kid in wrestling?" And my answer really never varies. I think 5th or 6th grade is like the perfect age. One of the things in wrestling is burnout. Sometimes people get started at a really young age. They go to a lot of tournaments, and then, by the time they hit high school, they're burned out. So that's why I think starting at like 5th or 6th grade is a perfect age, because wrestling has a way of humbling you. In middle school, when you first start off, it's going to be tough. By your 8th grade year, you'll be be a lot better. and win a lot more. But then ninth grade starts, and you go back to the bottom of the totem pole and have to build yourself back up again. So, that's why I think that 5th or 6th grade is the perfect age to start, because that burnout really doesn't start on those guys. Mm-hmm. However, part of that question is, how do you balance it? I balanced it by making my kids start wrestling, when they were like 4 and 5 years old. Mm-hmm. If I didn't, I would not see them hardly at all during wrestling season. So, between my wife and I, we have 5 boys. The youngest is 4.
Yeah. They
all wrestle. The 4-year-old is already wrestling, mm-hmm. because, I wouldn't see them if I didn't. Yeah. So, then, the 4-year-old's there. That means my wife is there. Mm-hmm. So, we just got back this past weekend from going down to Perry for the elementary school duels. 2 of our boys were competing in that. So, it may not be the relaxing time that you want, but it's still mm-hmm. time.
Exactly, and we were on here with Coach Jones earlier this week, and we were talking to him, and it I mentioned to him, it really does take a special type of lady to marry a varsity coach, just because of the limited amount of times you get during season. And yeah. Like you said, that there's not much relaxing time at all, especially in season. So that's a big deal. The next question I want to ask you, what if you had to pick any quote, if you know one off the top of your head that has just helped you throughout your life, being a dad, being a husband, being a wrestling coach, a wrestler, what would it be? Do you know one off the top of your head?
Well, I think if there's a quote, just a general quote, it would be, the man that thinks he can and the man that thinks he can't are both right. I think that's a quote that's good for pretty much everybody. Kind of I wouldn't say it's a quote, but it's kind of like, been our motto since I started coaching, mm-hmm. is I want any kid that comes into our program, I want them to have more self-confidence when they leave the program than when they came in. Because, self-confidence is something that can be generalized into other areas, whether it be, career or school or relationships. Everybody needs more confidence. So that's 100%. One of the biggest driving forces for me coaching.
For sure. So we got one more question for you today, and this is how we end every single Coach's Corner Talk Day. What's your favorite song?
I would say Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace.
Yeah. I'm human, make several mistakes throughout my life, and, still making them. I think if you're a dad and you're competitive, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, especially with your kids. So I need some grace in my life, so Amazing Grace.
Sure, we all do.
That would have to be the song.
Heck yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Well, thanks for watching, guys. That sums up our episode of Coach's Corner. We'll see you next time. I'm Cam.
And I'm Isaac.
We're here with Coach Hanley. See ya.